Welcome back to Waking Up with the Brink. I am James and also the Brink, and we are one person in this community. There is no community. That's the games revealed. This is the individual. This is about, okay, honestly, might not be the best intro to one of these, as this series is all about learning fun facts or just diving down topics that I think the community at Games Revealed and here want to learn about. And so you might hear Loki barking a bunch upstairs because he does not like Skinwalkers, and that is today's topic. We are going to go over Skinwalkers 101, kind of like understand what a Skinwalker is, where you can find Skinwalkers, how you can maybe tell if you've seen a Skinwalker, and then we're also going to, I'm going to have a story. We'll have a story time, and then we're going to listen to Mr. Ballin if we have some time. So I like to cap off, especially these things with something like that. So give me 1 second as I going to announce this real quick. Oh, yeah. Loki, you can hear him up there, my dog. He is not a fan of Skinwalkers. Okay. Okay. Well, if I was just posting it. Need to have like an auto post when it actually goes live. It's weird how YouTube doesn't allow that. Like it will post, like whatever I schedule it, it will post it up into the thing. Wolf, yes, Loki is not happy with Skinwalkers. Maybe he is a Skinwalker. We've had him since he's a puppy, so I'm pretty sure that do they mature? I don't know. But without further ado, we are going to go over, and I have these notes, and I need to remember to put the notes into the description below so you can get access to the sources and all that. And it is like slideshow-esque still, and we'll see how we do about that in the future. It just makes it easier to keep track my mind on what we're doing. So I guess before we get into how you doing, Wolf, how's everyone else doing? I know that takes people a little bit of time to trickle on. Oh, yeah, there we go. There's everyone. What's up? Chad, maybe Cat's there. Raichi, is Skinwalker a game or a channel? Skinwalker is a creature. I don't cover just games on this channel. This is my personal channel. Well, okay, this is where I do more stuff that does not align with Games Revealed. I do, so like we covered Aliens a week ago, covering Skinwalkers today. Sometimes it will be like what's in the news, like in the recent news, but honestly, I made a really cool t-shirt and that I'm going to order for myself. I'm going to show you where you can get it eventually, but it got me thinking about Skinwalkers, and I'm like, okay, we need to do Skinwalkers because they're fascinating, and I live near them, and I have stories about them, and I have, so this Waking Up with the Brink is myriad of different topics that we're going to cover, so. Oh, interesting. No, you're good, Chad. I was just like never know if Kate's there too, and I know Kat. Okay. So, without further ado, I have my face up here, and I have my face right here. Let's move on over. So, like I said at the beginning, we're covering all things Skinwalkers, like the bare essentials of like what they are, kind of where they come from, a lot of other things about them. I'm not going to, it is a very deep topic, a lot more than people realize, so I'm not going to cover every single thing about them, but we're going to do the topping to this, and we're going to do some story times too, so this will be a really fun one. Chad, it's probably best that Cat and Baby are asleep because they might be too afraid. Honestly, the concept that a Skinwalker could exist in society or like where you live is frightening. I won't hurt the narrative here with anything of what I believe at this moment. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Move that over here. Okay, so what is a skinwalker? In the Navajo language, Ye Naladlushi translates to by means of it. It goes on all fours, while perhaps the most common variety seen in horror fiction by non-Navajo people. The Ye Nald Lushi is one of the several varieties of skinwalkers in Navajo culture. Specifically, they are types of the Antihini. So, skinwalkers there's a varying amounts of different skinwalkers. Depending on locational tribes of Navajo people. I believe even some other tribes of Native American tribes have this mythos, have different concepts of like what a skinwalker is. And a skinwalker, how you become a skinwalker, and a lot of this stuff, we'll find out. That we're going to get more into the next slide. It is fairly creepy and just very sadistic on the skinwalker's part. I get why they don't want to talk about it much. And so they're definitely no joke. So, you can't see everything because of my face. I did not take that into account. I do apologize, but that's okay. Now I'll give you access to the notes soon. Navajo witches, including skinwalkers, represent the antithesis of Navajo culture values. And by the way, this is I took this from Wikipedia. I just wanted to get the basics down, but this is Wikipedia. I could have, in my own words, explained some of this, not as well, though. So, Navajo culture values. While community healers and cultural workers are known as medicine men and women, or by other positive terms in the community, indigenous languages, witches are seen as evil, performing harmful ceremonies and manipulative magic, in a perversion of the good works medicine people traditionally perform. In order to practice their good works, traditional healers may learn about both good and evil magic in order to protect against evil, but people who choose to become witches are seen as corrupt. And yes, so medicine worker, the people that would healers, medicine workers, they had a core central part of Native American and especially in this case, Navajo lives. This is an interesting. This is the photo of Navajo Yabachi dancers, and so I just want to get a little bit of perspective of like it's fascinating, and I don't want it to be like culturally insensitive, but I do think it's appropriate to appreciate people's culture and also to learn about this. And that's one of the things I want this series to be about, is both like having entertainment, fun, but also I want people to walk away feeling like that they've digested something that's interesting. What is this? Okay, and so we're going to continue with the Skinwalker. This is the last bit of the Wikipedia stuff, and then we're going to get into some deeper like characteristics of how you can kind of suspect a Skinwalker and how they're made. The legend of the Skinwalker is not well understood outside of Navajo culture, both due to reluctance to discuss the subject with outsiders, as well as what Cherokee Nation academic Adrain Keene says is a lack of necessary cultural context. The stories are embedded within traditional Navajo people are reluctant to reveal Skinwalker's lore to non-Navajos or to discuss it at all among those they do not trust. Keene, a founder of the website Native Appropriation, which there is a lot of appropriation. At the same time, cultures should be meant to be consumed in some way or another, as long as you're respectful. There is a bridge between those two things. Has written in the response to non-Navajos incorporating the legends into their writing, and specifically the impact when J.K. Rowling did so, that when this is done, we as Native people are now opened up to a barrage of questions about these beliefs and traditions. But these are not things that need or should be discussed by outsiders at all. I'm sorry if they seems unfair, but that's how our culture survives. That I will get a little bit on like a tangent. That is not quite how this all works. We share cultures. Now that being said, Native Americans do deserve a lot more privacy than some other cultures because they were invaded and essentially taken over, and ramrodded. Now, if they want to integrate into our culture, like some Native Americans will integrate into our culture, vice versa. When you have that type of thing happening, you're just going to share it automatically. So, yeah. Okay, Raichi. In the video game Between Two Souls, you fight a spiritual skinwalker. I believe you made me remember it when you mentioned Navajo. Okay, okay. Yeah, there are skinwalkers in games and all that. And I do think that almost anything culturally is fair game. I will also say if you're living in areas like I do, but it's also good to know, like, if you believe in skinwalkers, it's good to know how to spot them. And if you're in their territory, they're very territorial, at least according to the lores where I live in Utah. So it really comes down to, I don't think it's fully fair to keep it to yourself if you think they're real. At the same time, they're very taboo subjects, even in the Navajo realm. And so they don't want it getting out how you become a skinwalker. There's so much to it, and it is actually very weird and fascinating. Okay, so continuing in what is a skinwalker. The transformation allows a skinwalker to assume the appearance and the abilities of animals it chooses. That's one way. You can see, if you see an animal morphing, or you see something get hit and hurt or whatever, and then it suddenly is walking again somewhere else, or there's lots of different ways to spot whether a creature is a skinwalker. Skinwalkers are considered to be practitioners of dark and forbidden magic. They are said to use their powers to harm and terrorize people, often by taking on the form of a feared or dangerous animal. Bears. Honestly, they'll take, like, from the stories I know, they'll take any form depending on if they're not fearful, and they're dangerous. Like, they're almost nearly impossible to kill depending on who you talk to. Skinwalkers are believed to possess enhanced physical abilities and are difficult to kill or capture. Yep, just like that. They are said to have the ability to read minds and control the thoughts and actions of others. That's one that I have not heard. Maybe read the minds, because they'll become some creatures that you fear. But mind control, I'm not sure about. I have not heard that actually be a real thing. Not that, take everything I say here with a grain of salt, as this is a mythos. This is an interesting thing. Lojack, I think you're describing my cat. Yeah, Lojack, honestly, I would not be surprised if your cat was a skinwalker. Skinwalker encounters are typically associated with feelings of fear, unease, and sense of being watched. Now, I will preface, anytime your brain cannot, when you go out into the woods, when you go anywhere, when your brain cannot put together what is out in the woods making noises or doing things, it runs wild trying to figure out what's going on. And it's a natural instinct to be fearful and to be wary. It's how we survive. It's our survival instinct. That's how we survive. So, yeah, if you're feeling fear, unease, and sense of being watched, especially for no reason, if let's say you're in an area that just doesn't seem right, which there's a couple in Utah that can happen, that's where the kind of association comes from. It's like, okay, well, my human instincts are tingling. What's going on here? And so you're in danger. We have almost a sixth sense, or whatever. We have a sense of danger at times. And it's an interesting thing that we've tried to quantify, and it's kind of hard, but we kind of can sometimes read the room, read the area, and become weary of stuff without really knowing beforehand before something happens. There's also times where people have just been killed and hurt without that. So I wouldn't say it's the most, I would not say it's the most reliable sense, and people that brag about it are going to get hurt. Like, not people want to say, oh, I have amazing senses for when danger is away. You're going to put yourself in more danger that way. And honestly, sometimes it's just a happenstance that you were able to, just because you predicted something like small does not mean you're a prophet or prophetess. Okay, and then let's see here. Sorry. Navajo people believe that speaking about skinwalkers can attract their attention and bring bad luck or harm. So yeah, watch out. Watch behind me. I should have had Susie like come in with like a skinwalker thing and like attack me at the during this. Yeah. I also, this is one where I've talked to many of friends about skinwalkers. I've talked to a lot of people. I've consumed a lot of media. I've never ever felt like I've been in a presence or ever been in contact with a skinwalker. And I've been in areas that have been purported to have skinwalkers in them. There's a place called Skinwalker Ranch near me. I want to do that. Well, okay, Mr. Ballin's going to talk about that story, which is a fascinating one. I will visit. Maybe I won't visit that for my 10,000, but maybe for my 100,000 subscriber account or something like that. But yeah. Traditional Navajo teachings emphasize the importance of not engaging with or provoking skinwalkers to avoid their negative influence. Which, yeah, maybe that's what happened to my friend. LoJack, it's too hot in Texas for skinwalkers, even if they are F that noise. It is not too hot for skinwalkers in Texas. This is Utah. Where I'm talking about gets 120 in the summer is where I'm talking about. It's the Nevada-Utah border. Rachie, you have someone praying for your safety. Maybe that's why you're safe. True. Counter. I am very much hated in my community. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay. How do you become one? Becoming a skinwalker, according to Navajo belief, involves a complex and secretive process deeply rooted in their cultural traditions. And hopefully I'm not offending anyone, but if not, we got to learn it anyways. It is important to note that that attempting to become a skinwalker is considered taboo and morally wrong within Navajo. Dude, how you become a skinwalker is morally wrong in any culture. The following points outline some beliefs surrounding the process, but they should be understood within their cultural and mythological context. I agree with that. Navajo legend suggests that individuals become skinwalkers by committing heinous acts such as killing a close family member, particularly a sibling. The act of killing a family member is believed to grant the aspiring witch or shaman the supernatural abilities to shapeshift into animals. It is said that these individuals then undergo a rigorous initiation process, including performing dark rituals and ceremonies. Often in isolated or desolate areas, the ritual involves donning the skin of a desired animal, invoking malevolent forces or deities for empowerment. So what we're it's talking about multiple different ways and different, I think, tribes that have passed on this tradition. It's very much like, it's very much all depends on where the mythos, where the traditions come from, because they're Navajos and Native Americans are very famous for passing on traditions, their stories through, whether it be words, songs, or whatnot. The specific details of the process, rituals, and requirements for becoming a skinwalker are not openly discussed or shared, as they are considered dangerous and taboo within Navajo culture. Yes, honestly, I bet you could find something somewhere, and probably someone that attempted it, and probably is in jail right now. On top of that, I think the rituals and requirements are different depending on the tribes, like I mentioned. Navajo elders discourage any exploration or pursuit of becoming a skinwalker. It is seen as a violation of cultural values and beliefs. Yes. So, from what I understand from all the people, okay, not all the people. I act like I've talked to thousands of people about this, but I've talked to several people about this and read several stories and consumed a lot of media about this. Everything's mixed together, right? But the number one point up here, Navajo legend suggests that individuals become skinwalkers by committing heinous acts such as killing. The killing close family members or shaman or siblings is the quintessential, from my understanding, of becoming, and that's why I say it's morally wrong in any culture. Almost any culture, but like in enlightened culture, well, I'm not saying that this isn't enlightened, but like cultures that have been over the past few hundred years, yeah, killing is frowned upon, no matter what. LoJack, full disclosure, I don't believe in ghosts or things of that nature. LoJack, but I will say it is fun to delve into these things and just see, because like skinwalkers alone, whether or not you believe in them or not, fascinating to just learn about. I love it. And I love like I'm a big horror, dark secret, whatever kind of thing. It's fun. So, again, it is crucial to approach the topic of skinwalkers with respect for Navajo culture and recognize that attempting to become one is considered immoral and disrespectful. I'm just glad I didn't say culturally insensitive, which is like, no, it is just immoral. Like you kill someone, that's bad. Don't become a skinwalker. Plus, on top of it, oftentimes they are not the same person they were. They lose they lose essentially themselves in the process. Yes, they are immortal. They can talk and do some weird stuff. They have, but the person who they were before, they're voids almost. They are vapid. They don't. They're just. It sounds honestly. It sounds like hell. If you want to become hell on earth where you're just suffering all the time, become a skinwalker. Personally, like it's not worth it. So let's see, does this thing on repeat? I didn't even check to see if this thing should repeat. It goes to the next one. Sorry, hold on one second. We got a little bit of a, I didn't think about this, but I want to repeat. Playback. Loop forever for presentation. Yes, there we go. And then we're going to slow that down. Okay. Okay. Guys, you ready for this? Let's LoJack, some of the Skinwalker Ranch stories are pretty crazy though. The Skinwalker Ranch, I have full-on theories about that, and I think it's more along the alien-esque route or chemicals naturally occurring chemical reactions like nuclear or whatnot. I don't think it's anything potentially man-made, including skinwalkers, which is man-made, if you want to get technical about it. Okay, story time. First and foremost, I guess to just give a little bit of an explanation of like where this story happens, I'm from southern Utah. We share a border with Nevada, Arizona, and Colorado. Well, in southern Utah, yeah. My city doesn't. My city shares a border with Arizona and Nevada. In some of those places, there's a lot of rural areas down there. Desertic, but in some areas it has woods and a lot of foliage and creatures. A lot of creatures that are, honestly, sometimes like the place will be desolate, but not fully desolate, to where you'll see creatures pop up every once in a while that you're just like, why are you here? There was nothing here for the past half hour. In a lot of these areas, people go out to drink, people go out to smoke, people will go out and do various amounts of different activities, bound trickle wow. But like, to get more serious, like it can, and the area that I'm going to be talking about in this story time is very eerie. I even agree that it's a very eerie area because it's very, a lot of abandoned areas. It has Indian ruins. It has a lot of different things to it. And both, and honestly, settlements too. Like, when pioneers came down here, there's areas in this, like full areas that are just abandoned. And it's like, why were they abandoned? You know? So there's a lot of things that need to be explained for this area to be why it is. And I just never could get a full explanation. But what I could get was stories from other people. Well, I'll drive down it and feel fine, and I'll get out sometimes. It is definitely eerie. It's very, like, just, I don't know if you've ever been to a place, stepped out, and just be like, unease. And I guess I said earlier, I've never felt fear or unease in a lot of these areas. This is one or two areas will do this for me, and this is one of them. And I don't even know if anything was actually looking at me per se. It's that unsettling that like nature's calm, too calm. There's usually, even in the desert areas of southern Utah, I will see birds, whatever it is. And this area is not even desert-esque. It's more arid. It's crazy. what you'll feel in some of these areas of the unease. So, my friend, Bob, I won't give him his name out, he often has to go out and he was a firefighter at one point during the summers for the BLM. He would go out into these areas. Well, this is one of the areas where he's been to multiple times, but he wasn't there to firefight or anything like that. He was there with some buddies in a truck, and they went out there to just, I think he was in his late teens, early 20s. Nothing like, go out exploring, go out, do whatever you want to do. I don't know exactly what he was doing out there, but they were out there wandering around. And then they had an uneasy feeling, right? Like something was watching them. And they could see like a creature, a little mouse from the distance, just staring at them. And it was very uneasy. Like, it was very bizarre to have such a creature wait so long and just stare at them for so long, even while they were moving around and whatnot. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to pack up. We're done anyways. This is dusk. It's getting dark. We need to get out of here. So as they're getting into the truck and ready to go to drive off, they do start driving off. They see a coyote in front of them. They try to avoid it. It looks like they hit the coyote. They look back behind them. The coyote is on the ground and then trying to get back up. They look away. They look back, and it was actually a deer or something that looked like a deer or a coyote that got up and ran off. It got hit, obviously. It was not the hardest of hits, but it was enough to potentially knock the creature out. It was not knocked out. And it was in such a mass of like, it was like it changed and then it ran off. And it scared them so bad that I don't think that friend, he's with some other people, ever went back to that area again or would drive down. This is an alternate way to get to Vegas from where I used to live too. This is another reason to go this way. So he would never go, like he said he'd never go there again. And it really did freak him out. And it is a very creepy story, and especially getting it from the teller themselves is always fun to get that. So that is story time. I personally have been to many of different locations with Native American ruins and all that, both like historical as they're preserved and whatnot, but never had any encounters like this. And so it's always fascinating because you see an animal and then it changes to something else. Like when you look away is very weird and bizarre. While it could have been just there's two animals in the area. One goes into the bush. The other one comes out of the bush. Very much likely. It is very, interesting. Raichi, what is hard with folklore is finding the real canon of the stories. Media tend to destroy the lore for the sake of the story. It's true, Raichi. It's very true. So the lore, and the problem with Native American lore is it's tribal-based. Things can morph with time. Ceremonies can morph with time. Things, like, if you don't have it written down, the chances of it evolving are very high. LoJack, what? Let's go Skinwalker hunting. Hey, hit 1,000. Let's go to Skinwalker Ranch, see if we can get in on that. I just don't want to get sick from radiation poisoning. So that is that story. I honestly, it was always a fascinating story, and how my friend told it was just very eerie. It didn't help that I can picture where I'm talking about. It's not so foresty as this, as there are some areas actually here, because it is southern Utah. It's not the biggest forest. So think about half the amount of trees, and that's what that area was like. Where he was talking about was probably more of an opening in the forest / nature area, but it was very interesting. Yeah, it was more like this. So you see this right here. It was more like it was dusk, and it looked like this. There are some pine trees and some some aspen trees and down some of the canyon ways, but this is very much what the road looked like. It was by a river. Almost, honestly, this might be the area, to be fair, a portion of the area, but it's very dynamic, so things can change depending on where you go within a few miles. So it's very Southern Yukon can be very weird sometimes. So this will probably end up being a fairly short episode today, technically, as there's a lot to talk about. But before we start down the most believable alien encounter at Skinwalker Ranch, maybe this is like too weird of a change, because the Skinwalker Ranch is a weird one. I think a lot of people want to believe it's aliens, so maybe I mismatched this and should have chose something else. But we're gonna listen to this one no matter what, because I prepared for it. LoJack, give me my rifle and my night vision goggles, and I'll leave. That's how you kill someone. There's crazy mofos around here that are like gonna go out and do drugs, and you're gonna kill them because they're freaking don't understand danger. Oh, and don't forget to remind me, Shop Undead Clothing, so shopundead.com, is technically open. I don't have the payment process all the way implemented. It requires an additional step, but if you do end up buying something from there and it goes through, then it means it worked. So we'll go over. I have a really cool Skinwalker shirt that I love, and yeah. So, yeah. You guys are more than welcome to add more to the chat to talk about this more. It is honestly, Skinwalkers are probably one of the creepiest things in the horror lore for me. And what compounded that was, and I know that some people aren't going to like, this has been a very much evolved from what the Skinwalkers of Native Americans were, but the Dresden Files series, which I love that series, it will take different mythos and different things and pulls it into this adult Harry Potter. When I say adult Harry Potter, don't let your kids listen to it, because he ogles and he does like the female companion every once in a while. The Skinwalkers in that are like the most powerful things in the pretty much. So yeah, I do like consuming different media types and stories on this topic. So without further ado, let's watch this alien encounter of Skinwalkers. I don't think Skinwalkers are aliens, but I do think Skinwalker Ranch is aliens.
Some call this location the most paranormal location on the planet. Others call this whole thing just a big hoax. But what is undeniably true, and frankly what makes this case so much more interesting, is that unlike the vast...
We can think of this story melding into our last story with aliens a week ago.
...majority of paranormal stories and claims, this case was put to an enormous amount of scientific scrutiny. In fact, there was a decade-long study done on this case where PhDs and scientists converged on this one location and basically around the clock studied, all these claims of the paranormal that was happening in the area. And after a decade of research, the findings are pretty mind-blowing. And the case that I'm referring to is none other than the very famous Skinwalker Ranch. So the too long didn't read version of this story is you have a family that purchases a ranch out in Utah, and as soon as they move in, they start noticing some pretty bizarre things around.
So this ranch, I looked it up, is about 2 hours, an hour and a half. Like I think it's between an hour and a half to 2.5 hours from where I live right now. To get to this would be super easy technically for me. Barely an inconvenience.
Around their property. Everything from, some of their livestock going missing or being harmed. They have...
harmed is dead. They have livestock that are dead. This whole experiment, so one of the, and he's probably going to explain it, a billionaire, I believe, or at least a multi-millionaire in the area bought the place and has been investigating all sorts of different things. There's a whole series on it. You know how those series can go. They're a little bit more umphed to make it feel more exciting. But I will have to definitely say there is something weird about the location. So there's, I think, no denying that.
Of strange sightings in the woods of...
LoJack, I don't think they let people camp out at Skinwalker Ranch, but I guarantee you we could find a location near it. to camp out.
Creatures and lights in the sky. They eventually report it to the news, and that news story gets picked up by a couple of other outlets, and a billionaire who is obsessed with researching the paranormal sees this story. He buys the property and installs an entire team of scientists and researchers to basically try to figure out what was happening at this ranch. And they spend 10 years studying this ranch. The outcome is, well, turns out some strange things really were happening there. Before we get started, if this type of content appeals to you, the kind of strange, dark, mysterious content delivered in a story format, well, if that appeals to you, that's what my channel's all about. And I post 3 to 4 times a week. So if you would, if that appeals to you, please gently ransack the like button. And the Utes were selling.
He's so brutal with that like button.
Ranch. It was built in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it was actually built on a piece of land that had apparently been cursed. Prior to its construction, the Navajo tribe had a feud with the Utes Native American tribe. The Utes were selling off other Native Americans that they would capture. They would sell them into slavery to the United States. And so the Navajo, who had previously lived in the area where this ranch actually was built, they were forced off their land as the Utes came in and were rounding them up and selling them into slavery. And before the Navajo left that area, they cursed the land with what's called the Skinwalker curse. The idea was they were going to torment the Utes tribe for the hardships they had inflicted on the Navajo. The Skinwalker curse, legend has it, is this curse where these witches descend on the area and take the form or wear the skin of various predatory animals in the area, namely large wolves and foxes. They inhabit those bodies and terrorize anybody in the cursed land. At some point, this ranch is actually built on the land that had apparently been cursed. It wasn't until many years later when owners of that ranch started seeing predatory animals doing some very strange things in and around their property that they did some research on the area, learned about this curse, and then before long, the nickname had stuck. In 1994, Terry and Gwen Sherman purchased Skinwalker Ranch. It had actually been abandoned by the previous owners for the last few years, so when they purchased it, they got it for way below market price. So they are just so excited to be moving in. They breed cattle, and so they had 500 acres to let their cattle free roam. It was like the dream purchase for this family. And so when they finally do move in, like the day they move in, they don't really care that the grass is overgrown. It looks like things are kind of in disrepair. And in fact, when they go into the homestead, like the actual house on the property, they were so excited about everything that they kind of overlooked some of the strange things that they immediately noticed about the property. They go inside and every window has a deadbolt on it. The inside and outside of every door in the house, not just the doors leading outside, doors leading between rooms had locks, the front and back side. They noticed these big pikes that were driven into the ground at the front door and back door of the property with massive chains stringing off of them, which looked like pretty powerful guard dogs had been there. They're thinking to themselves, well, this is a huge piece of property. Perhaps the previous owners are a little bit paranoid because they're kind of isolated. And so they didn't really raise a red flag when, to be honest, had I moved into a property where every single door and window had multiple locks on it, they had these big guard dogs, I'd probably ask a couple questions. But you know what? Terry and Gwen, they're just so excited about this purchase that, again, they kind of just overlook it. So on
the things that we'll do as a society to get good real estate and to get like a location that's decent. And it's going to get worse. People are going to be rooming with Skinwalkers soon with how bad the real estate market is here.
The day that they are moving in, Terry and Gwen have some family members over to help them offload trucks and move stuff into the homestead. And it's during this process as they're moving things out of the truck into the house. And again, you got to remember that the house is situated like right in the middle of the property. And you can see in every direction, basically unobstructed, because it's basically open desert, with the exception of a couple areas that are, basically forests. And as they're offloading some of the stuff into the house, Terry looks out at one of these tree lines and he notices this huge wolf, or what looks like a wolf, pretty well off in the distance, kind of meandering its way over towards them. But it's far enough off that this is not enough to be totally worried about it. After all, I mean, Terry was a rancher and his family were fairly rugged. They carried weapons and they were used to, protecting their livestock from predators. So this was not a, oh my goodness, I can't believe a wolf is near us. It was more like, okay, let's make a note that there's a wolf walking towards us. And so Terry...
To be fair, the chances of it being a wolf as opposed to a coyote is a lot lower. Like, I have yet to see a wolf here in Utah. They do exist. They're a little bit more shy, but coyotes, that is, are much more prevalent. Bobcats, cougars, you're more likely to see those three than a wolf. They're not as prevalent in this area. And I semi-recently, like in the past few years, learned that moose do actually live here kind of too, but it's in the northern part.
He does.
Barely.
He tells his family, "Hey guys, just so you know, there's a wolf coming towards us right now." And the whole family is now standing near the truck, and they're watching this wolf.
And if you've never seen a wolf, they're much bigger than you might realize. They're much bigger than dogs.
Terry recalled as he's staring out watching this wolf, it's kind of almost walking in like a snake, like a serpentine path towards them from hundreds of yards out. It's still quite a ways out. Terry notices that there was a fence that was out where this wolf is. And the fence was pretty big, and the spaces between posts were about 6 feet. When he had a good look at the wolf next to the fence, he could tell that the wolf was at least 6 feet long. And he was thinking, are my eyes playing a trick on me? Like, that's an enormous wolf. That's the biggest wolf I've ever seen.
That's even big for wolf standards.
The wolf wasn't acting angry or aggressive. It was just kind of skulking its way towards him, very nonchalant, broad daylight. And at some point, Terry and the family, they're standing behind the truck, and Terry said that they all had this feeling that the wolf was not going to harm them. And the wolf got about 100 yards away, and Terry and his family are transfixed. And he even said he didn't understand why they weren't scared or why they weren't, running away or shooting at it or something, but they didn't. All of them are just standing there watching this wolf that's massive. And the wolf is wagging its tail and acting like a domesticated dog. The wolf comes over and goes up near Terry's
That would be,
who was there helping
honestly,
some of the
maybe even more fear. Like, having it be even friendly like that, wolves can be semi-domesticated, but they're not. That's what dogs are domesticated, technically, from decades, centuries ago. So, yeah.
Terry's father just kind of reflexively reaches out to start petting this. He's petting like up at his head level, this massive wolf. And the wolf just acts like a domesticated dog and kind of rubs against his hand and then starts walking away from them, just wagging its tail and not doing anything, not causing them any harm, not snarling, not growling, nothing. But just as nonchalantly as it walked over to them, it walks over to where they had a pen with a couple of cows and calves inside of this pen.
Reishi mentions, I nearly bought a house below market price before the house and all the inspections were clean. It was too good to be true. I paid a soil inspector and the soil was flooded with biohazard chemicals, and Wolf wants one of those. Wolf, you don't want a biohazard chemical house. Yeah, no, that sucks, Reishi. Some chemicals are able to be cleaned up. I wonder what if you would have bought it, what would be the process of trying to clean up a place like that? I'm really curious. And that does, it's, when you see something too good to be true, it oftentimes is. Most people want to get theirs, and especially greedy people, like rich, greedy people will always try to get theirs. They're addicted to it.
And one of the calves had its head through the post that was keeping them in this cage, just kind of watching this wolf. And the wolf notices it, and in an instant jumps over to this calf and immediately has the whole head of the calf in its jaws, just trying to rip it out of the cage. But it can't get it to squeeze through the cage. And so all of a sudden, like Terry and his family are broken out of this weird trance. And Terry starts firing shots at the wolf. It strikes the wolf and has no impact.
Yep.
They run over, they start hitting it with the back end of an axe. They're trying to get this thing off of the calf because their livestock, that was their livelihood. And these are rugged people, and so they're trying to fight to save their property, to save their cows. And the wolf is just totally unaffected. It's not trying to attack Terry or his son that are trying to get rid of it. The wolf is just trying to attack the cow, but it won't let go. And finally, it just kind of gives up on the calf, starts kind of retreating. Terry ends up getting his rifle, a high-powered rifle, and takes a shot at the wolf one more time. But again, it just has no impact on the wolf. And the wolf just, at some point, just is, I guess, bored, turns around and kind of
Miranda's off
into the woods. After they kind of were brought out of that initial trance, that they remembered this horrible smell that's like foul, almost chemical smell that just permeated the whole area after the wolf was there. Terry and his son, they decided to go track this wolf because now there's this massive predator that's going to make owning cattle extremely difficult, and so they would have to go deal with this predator. And so instead of retreating into the house, they grabbed their weapons and they tracked.
It sounds like they need a bazooka to deal with this thing. If your guns aren't killing this thing, yeah, you're going to need a bazooka or grenades or military.
The wolf that's now jogged off into the forest. And they make it to an area in the forest where the ground is very muddy and sodden. And Terry could easily make out these footprints that just suddenly stop. And they just couldn't make sense of it. And so they went back to the house and they told their family, like, we tracked it into the woods. There's no blood trail. There's nothing. It just walked in and vanished. So this is day one of being at this ranch. And they're all on edge now. The whole family is on edge. They really don't know what to make of that wolf. The sheer size of it, the fact that it was totally unaffected by being shot multiple times. You know, there's real concern over their own livelihood because they keep cattle and they're only going to have more that are going to be out in these pens. And if there are wolves that are 3 times the size of a normal wolf that are walking around killing cattle, that's a big problem if you own cattle. And so they're on edge.
Yeah, if you think about it, so every piece of, like, every cow / calf they lose, it can be potentially thousands of dollars. So if you're selling calves, you can get anywhere into the mid to high hundreds. If you're selling 1, 2, 3-year-old cows or steers or whatever, like, it's in the thousands.
And they're all, in a way, trying almost not to talk about how crazy and how bizarre that encounter with the wolf was. They're just like, they're treating it like it's just a normal predator problem. Like, man, we gotta get those wolves, we gotta protect our cattle. But in the back of everybody's minds, they're like, something very strange is happening here. Gwen, she was having some other very strange things that were happening to her that she was not tying to the wolf thing. She was just noticing a couple of distinct things that were happening to her that made her think that she actually had a very real, like, medical problem, that she had, like, you know, true memory issues. Because two things.
This is a common one too. Other people have had this issue. People have had a lot of different health issues by going to Skinwalker Ranch. That's why I'm more hesitant, is that I don't know. They've tested, they've had radioactive areas. They've had some weird stuff happen there. I want to see more tests happen, obviously, but I'm all for visiting shortly. I just don't want to stay there for too long, as it's more of a biohazard issue for me.
Things happened. One, in that first week, she had gone to the grocery store, and when she came back, she put the groceries away, and then she left to go to the other room, and when she came back, all the groceries were now back in the bags. And so for like 20 minutes, she's just sitting there like dumbfounded with, did I put the groceries away? Same day, she goes to take a shower, and she hangs her towel in the bathroom like anyone would, and she takes a shower, and then when she gets out, the towel's missing. And she's like, huh. She gets another towel, and she towels
Repetitive tasks and stress can really mess with your mind, just as a note here.
off, and then she finds the towel hanging up in a closet on the other side of the house. And so between the groceries and the towel, she's like, is there something wrong with me? Am I like having a stroke? Am I having a medical issue here that I'm like literally losing my mind? And it wasn't until Terry actually had a similar experience that she started to wonder if this had to do with maybe that strangeness with the wolf, that maybe there's just something odd happening about this property.
Maybe this is where the
Terry,
mind control
in that
kind of
first
portion
week,
happens.
He had been digging holes for a new fence. And he had this big fence digging tool. It was about 70 pounds. that he was using to dig the holes for the
Oh, that's a good auger. That would make a really good auger for 7 Days to Die.
fence. And so he had taken a break after making a bunch of posts for this fence. He took a break, left his fence digging tool, at the last place he had dug a post, and he went in to grab a bite to eat, came back out, and his fence digger is missing. And initially he just goes into the house and he's like, hey, to his wife, to his kids, like, did you guys move my fence digger? Like, do you know what happened to it? Like, where is it? It's not out there.
Better than
Like,
a gold digger, right?
I have no idea. And so they couldn't find it. And a week goes by, and he's out patrolling his property looking for wolves. And in the tree, like well away from where he had been digging the post before, in the tree, his fence digging tool that's 70 pounds is like 70 feet in the air, strung up in this tree. So Terry comes back to the house and he tells his family about the fence digging tool being in the tree. And that's when Gwen tells Terry about her experience.
So I wouldn't put it past locals playing pranks too at times, as people love to screw around with other people, especially teens, people that are bored. But that is, getting an auger into the tree like that quick enough is... Oof.
With the groceries going back in the bag and a towel being moved around the house. And everybody in the family starts to really start being scared. We can't explain what's happening on this property, and we're very isolated. And what's the deal with all these locks on all the doors? I mean, they're starting to feel really concerned. Following the fence digging tool being found, Terry started to notice lights on his property. Initially, because this was the first couple of weeks they're there, he would see lights way at the far end of his property that looked like
super pixelated.
And he would think someone must have made a wrong turn that wound up on my property, and we were kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and they'll just leave. And so when he first started seeing these lights, that's what he assumed it was.
Rachie mentions, if I saw that, I will write bankruptcy and start from zero and clean windows in a city. Rachie, 100%. 100%, Rachie. I think once you start... the wolf alone would have me calling in animal control and potentially the military. I know that they probably wouldn't. Like, you'd have to get evidence at one point, but that's like, if you can't kill that thing with a gun, then, yeah, like, I'm sorry. Depending on where I live, if certain things are happening, like the auger in the tree, even if it's a prank, I would not put someone that has the effort to put something into the tree like that past potentially killing me at one point. Welcome, Andre. Nobody who sees something has a good camera. It's a known fact. Yeah, kind of. I mean, we've got some pretty good pictures of stuff. That was at night, and this is years ago, like really think years ago. So I'm surprised it was that good.
It was just people making a wrong turn. But
it's also something I could have made in the pixel editor program too.
Started to see it so often that he wondered if people were illegally hunting on his property. And so one night he sees these lights on his property and he goes out to investigate. In fact, he's angry. He's had all these strange things happen. His family's on edge, and now he's mad and he's going to take it out on this person who's illegally hunting on his property. And he starts charging out to these lights, and he starts getting closer and closer, and he starts to realize it's not making any sound. If this was like a truck, it's not making any sound. And we're in an area where I could totally hear that if it was a vehicle, and he can't hear anything. And as he gets closer and closer, the lights start retreating from him without making a sound, and then float up into the sky and disappear. And Terry's like, what is going on here? The winter rolls around, and it's a particularly brutal winter. And one night he couldn't account for one of his cows, and so he's out looking for this one stray cow, and he searches this whole property, and there's only one area that he hasn't searched, and it's that forest where that giant wolf had disappeared after marching in there, and they trapped him.
Who would want to search that?
And so he goes
I
in there,
wouldn't.
and as soon as he gets to the tree line, he notices there's a bunch of footprints from what looks like a cow. And he's
You gotta love-
because
You gotta love the watermark on the image.
he follows it into the woods.
All right.
And much like the wolf that had just disappeared in that muddy, sodden area in the forest, in the same spot, the footprints that appeared to be this cow had also just, disappeared. And then over the course of the remainder of the winter, that would happen 4 more times. He would just the animals would run away and just disappear without a trace. By the end of the winter, after all these animals have just mysteriously disappeared, Terry and his family, but Terry in particular, has really gone into full paranoia mode. He, at night, would just like stalk his own property, like hiding behind bushes with his weapon, and like hope to see what was taking his cattle. And so one night, as he's,
No, I wouldn't be doing that. I'd be effing the right out there. There's no way I would be. There's just no way. I'd get a scope for my gun, or really high power binoculars, or something along those lines, and I think it was a 2-story home. I'd be on the second story. Obviously, you need night vision, but I know they had night vision even back then for these types of things that people could get. That's what I would be doing. There's no way I would be out amongst that, especially if I'm paranoid.
Doing another fruitless search around his property, he catches out of his periphery what looks like a kind of mass of something moving around in the trees near his property. And at this point, he was kind of obscured by some shrubs and some plants. And so he kind of crouched down and looked out at the tree line. And he sees in the tree line this like strange shape kind of moving about inside of the trees. And he would describe the mass as looking almost like a stealth fighter jet, but really small. And it was making no sound, and it was hovering about 20 feet off the ground. And he's crouched down, not making a sound, watching it. And it's just kind of like moving around the tree line. And it has these lights that looks to be kind of scanning the ground. And it's just kind of moving around. It's shining these lights, these multicolored.
Yeah, aliens don't give a f about us. They care about finding skinwalkers. Honestly, if an alien's like looking at our society and they're like, "What's these skinwalkers?" That sounds interesting. We're gonna go try to find that. That's what they were looking for, that wolf, because they would much rather study a skinwalker than us, and I don't blame them. But at the same time, the aliens are probably gonna die.
Colored lights in the ground, and Terry moves a tiny bit to get a better angle on this thing. And he makes the tiniest of noises against the brush, just like a tiny little, barely audible sound. And this mass that's pretty far away, the lights immediately turn off, and it angles itself so it's facing directly at Terry. And Terry can feel it right away that it's heard this tiny little sound he's made, and now it's staring directly at Terry. And Terry's like terrified, and he's looking at this thing, wondering like, oh my God, like, is it gonna come take me? Like, what is this? Is this the thing that's been taking my livestock? And he's terrified, and he's staring at it, and it just flies away. By the spring of 1995, things have gotten really, really bad for Terry and his family. Now, not only are they losing livestock inexplicably, but they're showing up.
That's
the actual
devastating.
Cows themselves are showing up.
It'd be better if they just sold their cows and just moved on from this location. Once you lose enough, it's not worth to be at this location.
Back on their property, hours or days later, just kind of in random locations on the property, and they look like they've had surgery done, like precision cuts, and pieces of them are missing. And in addition, some very strange things are happening at the house. At night, they would see these entities walking around their property, these humanoid, they described them as having no expression, just walking around their property. And sometimes they would walk right up to the glass, put their hands on the glass and look in, but there was no face. And like Terry and his family.
So that is very creepy. So with paranoia and with and multiple people, it's not as likely when you have more people in the same area, but with multiple people, you can run. Sorry, it's starting to get really nippy in here. It's cold. You can end up getting into hallucinative joint sessions with other people where you're going to be both talking about the same thing, so then you'll hallucinate or kind of visualize or have schizophrenic almost like episodes. So and sometimes like high amounts of arsenic. I don't know if arsenic per se would do something like that, but I know we have a lot of those issues here in Utah. There's a lot of different chemicals, different compounds, different things in that could cause this type of stuff. There's so much so much that could cause what's going on here from just like not saying it's skinwalkers or aliens, but it's fascinating and curious to see what it really is. I really want to know because there's something going on at Skinwalker Ranch.
They had blinds down and they would use the deadbolts on every single door and window, but they could hear them rapping at the glass and they could hear them communicating in a language they didn't understand right outside of their house. And this became so regular that it was almost impossible to sleep. Terry's kids started performing very poorly in school because they weren't sleeping. Terry's wife, Gwen, she lost her job at the bank because she wasn't sleeping and she was like delusional. They were all just at an absolute breaking point.
It sounds like they were getting more and more restless sleep. Can also 100%. If you're not sleeping well and the worse it gets, the more hallucinative you can get. Like you can really start to just, your mind goes bonkers. And I have 2 very active kids, so I've felt like I've had fever dreams with them around too. So
Terry is now feeling totally disheartened. One night he's sitting on his porch with his rifle and he notices out on the horizon a new phenomenon. He was used to seeing the lights on his property that would be off in the distance that would disappear, and he had previously seen that kind of like fighter jet thing that was scanning the area. Like those were 2 types of lights he would see, but there was a new light he saw as he's sitting on his porch. It was almost like this orangey orb that appeared off in the distance. Since he had his rifle with a high-powered scope on it, he just lifts up his rifle and he looks through his high-powered scope and he zooms in all the way, and he can see that this orb, he describes it as a portal. That as he's looking at it, it has almost like an oval shape to it, and even though it was nighttime, in the middle of the orange orb is this blue sky. It's as if he's looking through a portal into another world where it's broad daylight and there's a sky. And he doesn't know what to make of it, but he can see that a black figure is crawling out of this portal into his property. And it looks just like the black entities that were kind of basically walking around his property at night. In addition to these figures that are crawling, like imagine that scene from The Ring where the girl crawls out of the well. They're crawling out of this portal into his property and then scurrying away into the tree line. And he sees weird craft as well coming into his property.
So I will say, and we're not done with the story yet. This is a very long story. One of the probably biggest signs that something was also going on mentally in this situation was that they had not left at this point. And people will say, well, where would they have left? They might even say that. There's plenty of places they could have bunkered down just at like a homeless shelter. If you're experiencing this level of weirdness, you'd be sleeping in your car somewhere else. So there's something going on.
Through this portal, and then the portal shuts and disappears. Following this night with the orange portal, Terry started to notice blue orbs that he and his family would say were the worst and most terrifying thing of all of the things they experienced. And considering they had tall, featureless black humanoids peering in their windows and rapping on their windows, that's saying something, okay? So a blue orb started showing up on their property. And the way they described it, Terry and his family, was whenever the orb came near you, it gave you this extreme sense of anxiety. It was almost like it was emitting this feeling that you automatically got where suddenly you were unbelievably anxious and terrified of the blue orb. And then as soon as it left, you would, not be anxious anymore. And so one night he's sitting on his porch like he had begun doing, and he sees this orb show up on his property. And his 3 dogs are sitting with him that see the orb, and they start growling and barking. And so he lets his dogs go, thinking that maybe they can scare this thing off. And the dogs take off running towards this blue orb.
And they die.
And they chase it, and you can see the orb, Terry can see the orb that starts to kind of retreat. And he's thinking, oh my goodness, I finally won something. My attack dogs are gonna scare this orb away. And they chase off into the woods, and he sees this thing, the blue orb, retreat into the woods. And then when he's thinking again that finally, a little victory for us, he hears his dogs yelping. And he's too terrified to go check it out. And so he ends up going inside and locking the doors, locking the windows like they had been, and just kind of retreating. So the next day, when the dogs haven't returned, Terry and his son, they go out looking for the dogs.
You killed your dogs.
When they get out there, they get to a clearing and they find 3 stacks of ashes in like little burned out circles, as if there had been a fire previously in these 3 little spots. And it turned out it was the ashes of his 3 dogs that had gone into the woods. They had just been vaporized. Terry decides that it's time.
You can burn something. It doesn't have to be vaporized. That's like playing into the story that it's aliens. And I'm not. Once again, I'm a skeptic. I'm a skeptical person, but love the story kind of stuff. But it is like, what did happen to the dogs? There's like a lot of here. It's like, what did happen? Like, it is pretty effed up. Rachie, the dogs lasted for this long. Yeah, I'm surprised too. Yeah, it's pretty freaky.
To leave, and he wants to sell the ranch, and so he puts the property up for sale and goes to a local news outlet, and he tells them about what's happening on his property. And
DLS, Death Lord Strong is in the chat. The only time he ever experienced something creepy was probably in Iraq. He got a weird vibe walking around Babylon and the ziggurat of Ur. Yeah, that sounds honestly like I was talking about. There's a couple of areas, like there's places I visited outside of America too, where it's just like Russia's a great one. I've been, and maybe that's where I get this association from in southern Utah, in some areas where it's vacant of life, it seems like, but then there's some life, and you're like, no other life except for you is here. What are you? To not be afraid or whatnot. Places where there should be a lot more life. Things. Russia has similar. They have, I was in some areas that had irradiated forests. I didn't go into the irradiated forest. They'd say, don't go beyond this point. But it was so eerily quiet in those areas. It's crazy what dead silence can do to your mind. Russia has Rasputin. I guess you could almost be a frickin' Skinwalker. Wolf's ranch in Hawaii was scary.
As fate would have it, a billionaire by the name of Robert Bigelow,
there we go,
who had invested millions of dollars in standing up this scientific research team, this all-star team of PhDs, specifically to research what he described as high strangeness, which really is just paranormal. Basically, he was obsessed with the paranormal and wanted to investigate the paranormal. And he had actually seen that fairly obscure story. When he saw that it was up for sale, Robert Bigelow, the billionaire, saw this great opportunity to buy the piece of property and actually make it the headquarters of his own scientific research team. Not only to investigate what was happening on...
Okay, I'm going to do a very big, air quotes, scientific research team, as a lot of tools they used are not scientifically recognized. That being said, it's still cool that he did that and is trying to research and really get down to what's going on there. But when you're doing scientific research, you don't go with the hypothesis for you have to create a hypothesis and then try to prove it. But sometimes people go with like, oh, this is what I expect to see. But you're supposed to be like, okay, hypothesis is aliens, or we could have a couple of hypothesize, and go and figure out what it is. But if you're not going to be like, scientific research is very rigorous, and it's become more so over the years and anything that most of the things you enjoy in today's society, research-wise or health-wise, technological-wise, can be contributed or attributed to the scientific process, 100%.
Walker Ranch, but use it as kind of a hub to do other scientific research. So he purchases the ranch, and Terry actually, even though he did not want to spend any time at the ranch, on some level wanted to know what the research was going to show, because he was very curious, like, what is going on at this ranch that's been plaguing my family. So he offers to stay on as kind of like the ranch manager, because Robert Bigelow and his team are a bunch of scientists, and business people. They don't have any experience on the ranch, and so they're happy to keep him. So Terry is still connected to the ranch, but at this point he's sold it to Robert Bigelow. So Robert Bigelow's scientific team was called the National Institute for Discovery Science, or NIDS, N-I-D-S, NIDS for short. And Bigelow had actually built the team before purchasing Skinwalker Ranch. And what he went out and did is he recruited some of the most incredible scientists and PhDs he could possibly recruit, but he didn't want people that were interested in the paranormal. He wanted people that were inherently skeptical, so that if he was ever able to kind of prove the existence of high strangeness, that he would have credibility in doing that. And so he went out and found these incredibly skeptical, incredibly smart scientists and PhDs. And so they move into Skinwalker Ranch, and the first thing they do is they need to start doing testing to make sure.
They did a whole series, I'm sure, to help pay for this too. He's not an idiot. He's going to make this thing funded through a TV show. But yes, there is a whole TV show about this. You can watch it. It is does have a lot of unexplained things a part of it. It's creepy. At the same time, like I said, I'm skeptical. There is still stuff to explain it, but it doesn't mean that like real life can be just as creepy as stuff we fabricate, or I shouldn't say fabricate, or like, or culture, or what's passed down and whatnot. Sometimes real life can be creepier. Like the atomic bomb and radiation stuff like that is super eerie. Like it can be eerie in those areas, and it's deadly, and it can kill you. Like it's
that this whole all the stories about Skinwalker Ranch coming from Terry and his family were not just some grand illusion by the family that, you know, they could have just made it up. And so they get in there and they start running these tests. So that first year, as they're running these tests, which are largely things like, okay, let's check the environment and see if there aren't any, you know, plants that are giving off spores that could be hallucinogenic that they're breathing in. Let's check their water supply and make sure there wasn't something happening in their water supply. Let's do psychological assessments of the family. Let's ask neighbors. Let's do all of our diligence to make sure it's not something environmental or psychological. And over that first year, while they're doing this research, there isn't much activity at the ranch, save a couple of instances where there were some strange lights. So that first year is fairly uneventful, but what's important is that the NIDS researchers come to a conclusion that this did not seem like a hallucination. This did not seem like a something coming from, you know, a plant or water supply. This seemed like the Terry and his family were really experiencing something odd. They just didn't know what it was. One day, Terry and actually Gwen, who was helping him, were tagging some of the new calves, the new cows that had been born, putting these little tags in their ears. And so Gwen was there helping. And so Terry and Gwen, they tagged this new calf, put a yellow tag in its ear, and they move on and they're tagging other animals. And so for about 40 minutes, their eyes and their attention are not focused on this one calf or that one area of the ranch. They're tagging other animals. And then their dog that was with them starts growling and reacting in the direction of where this calf had been. And so Terry and Gwen turn around and they look and they don't see anything. And they start walking over. They find the calf that they had tagged about 40 minutes ago has been basically surgically dissected. And all that's left are its legs and its head. And in addition, the ear where that tag was had been removed. And so they immediately call over the NIDS researchers. So the NIDS veterinarian comes over and looks at the scene and just can't make sense of it because the incisions on the calf were so...
So just to bring in the community into this, Wolf used to live on, Esoteric Wolf that is, a big part of the community. She's the wrangler of all of us. She used to live on a ranch in Hawaii. It was in the mountains. And it was also next to a Hawaiian spiritual place called Heiau. I don't know how to pronounce it. Heiau. It was up in the mountains with the clouds and everything. She didn't have water or electricity, and they had to get their water in big containers to bathe, cook, and drink. She also had an outhouse. The line was from 100 feet from the house too. The gurney that they had to use to get supplies to the house. Crazy.
Well done that it looked like someone with real surgical expertise had done this on an operating table. There was no sign that this was done by a predator, and there was no blood anywhere. So this prompts a massive search of the property, because in many ways this is what the NIDS researchers are looking for, are real occurrences of something that is highly...
No animal, if it's massive enough, maybe, but is not going to be surgically cut. So something like the calf going down like that, I do believe, like, it's a weird, bizarre thing. Like, getting cut up and surgically cut up like that is super bizarre and would warrant, like, a further investigation, obviously. And in that amount of time they said it happened is, like I said, almost pretty much impossible for a wild animal, as they're not surgically cutting. They rip and tear.
Strange that they can go investigate. And so all of the researchers and everybody there begins searching the property for whoever was responsible for this dissection of the cow. And they start searching the property, and the dogs, they had all these guard dogs that were kept at each of these observation posts that they had set up around the ranch as soon as the NIDS team had moved in. They were all looking in the same direction, all four of these four observation posts. And they're all cowering in the back of their cages, all looking in the same direction. And so they start making their way towards the tree line where all these dogs are looking, and they stop short when Terry says, "I see something in the tree." So they stop their car and they're looking, and in the tree is this massive wolf, this like wolf-like humanoid that's basically perched on a tree limb. And Terry takes out his rifle and he aims at the creature up in the tree, this huge creature, and everybody sees it. All the NIDS researchers are looking at this creature, and they're like, "Oh my God, what is that?" Terry starts firing at this thing, and it just disappears into the woods. And so the team charges into the woods, they fan out, and they pick up a couple of tracks of this huge thing that has like this massive footprint with these huge claws, but much like the wolf that had disappeared and the cattle that had suddenly disappeared when they went into the woods, they couldn't find any traces of this thing. But they did smell this horrible stench that Terry remembered smelling. It stuck with him that first day when that large wolf had come over on the very first day they were moving in. It was that same smell. But they couldn't find this huge animal. So dumbfounded, the NIDS researchers just go back to the property and no one can make sense of it. And they have the footprint and they have their own eyewitness testimony, but like they couldn't make sense of how something that big could just get away. And so over the following month, they're like searching the property and they're looking for any more signs of this huge creature or any.
So, Wolf, you bring up a good point. So Wolf mentions a part of her story. Sad, she has a sad story about what happened there, and the Hawaiians, like brothers, teachers, didn't know the story was about them specifically, and said what happened there was because we didn't give enough. So what happened to Wolf at her place? Offerings to the gods and the spirits is a very, very old tradition in probably most cultures at some point. Jewish history, like even Jewish traditions have offerings. A lot of Asian cultures have offerings. Offerings is a very common thing. In retrospect, what we're talking about here with Skinwalkers is this is a cursed area by Skinwalkers, and maybe even some of the witches that or evil people that were a part of the tribes became the Skinwalkers that haunted this place because they're immortal essentially. So hopefully, Wolf, yours is not. It sounds like it's just a sad story, maybe not enough offerings. Once again, bad things just happen to us, though. Bad things just happen in this life. People that give a lot, I've seen it, because I grew up in a very religious, well, Utah is very religious in a lot of different ways. A lot of people that do everything that's right, offerings, whatever, because we have offerings in the form of tithes, a part of the religion. I'm not a part of the religion here, but bad things still happen to people, so... It's really like, and people don't want to accept things too that maybe consequences they had, like if you do too much of one thing, can be on you, and so people want to be like, okay, well, it's offerings, it's this or that. They don't want to accept that bad things happen in this world, and or that they are not a part of it. It's not their fault.
Anything. The only thing they noticed is that the guard dogs consistently stayed in their kennels and did not want to come out. They were acting like they were kind of being hunted, and they were they were cowering quite a bit, and they were scared to go out in the open, but they couldn't find anything. So it was around
Just
this
sounds like my
time
dog.
that Terry and Gwen are kind of back to doing work around the ranch, and one day they're driving off to one section of the ranch, and they pass by the corral where 4 of their prized bulls were. These are very expensive animals that are all in this enclosure.
Bulls are
So
very
they
expensive.
drive past and they take a mental note that they're seeing these bulls in this enclosure, and they drive off to the other side of the ranch where they're doing some work, tagging animals and building fences, whatever it is they were doing. But when they come back and they round the
Yeah, if you've been watching this whole time, Loki, my dog, is not barking anymore. He's scared. He's cowering upstairs because of this story. When I go to Skinwalker Ranch, should I take Loki?
corner where they're first able to see that corral of bulls again, they are like, where are they? Because the bulls were not in their enclosure, and they weren't anywhere. And so they're panicked because these are very expensive animals, and they run over, and Terry sees that the gates to the corral are still locked, but there's no bulls in there. There's no sign of a struggle or anything. And it just so happens that right next to the corral was this fairly small trailer that hadn't been used in years. In fact, it was literally wired shut. It was just sitting there. And Terry, just for whatever reason, runs over and looks in one of the windows. And inside of this tiny enclosure are these 4 bulls, completely calm, all crammed into this tiny trailer. They could barely fit. They're not fighting with each other or anything. They're just calmly sitting there as if they're in some kind of a trance. And Terry yells to Gwen, like, hey, they're over here. They're right here. And it like startles the bulls out of their trance. They start panicking and kicking, and they end up getting them out of this enclosure, and it takes them hours to finally round them up and get them back in the corral. But they're unharmed.
So we have things here in Arizona. I'm sure in Nevada and Colorado have some of this. It's called loco weed, and if cows get involved with it, it can make them go kind of like loco, right? Like essentially they eat it, they'll go kind of crazy, be super aggressive. My dad's been had a bull hit him off his horse once, and so there's also this type of stuff that can happen too that can cause cows to freak out.
It is almost impossible to get even one bull into that small of an enclosure. It would take hours to maybe be successful at doing that.
I want to know what the size of the enclosure is, because it's not impossible. It is definitely not impossible, and how aggressive the bull is and all that. Like, there's a lot, like feed, oats. There's so much different ways to get. It really does depend how small it is.
4 bulls into that enclosure was pretty much impossible. And to do it when they basically were calm after they were in there is also somewhat impossible. And it was important to note that Terry saw when he looked in the window that the only entrance to that trailer was wired shut still. It had not been undone. In fact, the cobwebs at the corner where the opening basically formed with the sides of the trailer, they were still intact, like it had not opened. And it made no sense how those bulls got in there. And so the NIDS researchers come over, and they can't make sense of it either. Upon further investigation, the NIDS researchers found that the bars of the corral that held the bulls, a section of it had been highly magnetized. And so while they're doing this research, trying to figure out if magnetic fields has anything to do with the strange occurrences at the ranch, 2 of the NIDS researchers were on the outskirts of the property using their compass to look for magnetic fields, and they started smelling. They both reported smelling that horrible metallic, like rotting smell that other people had reported smelling anytime they saw that large wolf creature. And when they started smelling it, their compass started to...
I think you're having a stroke, man. This place just sounds like a stroke maker.
...to flitter, and then pointed away from north towards wherever the smell was. And they remember thinking that they felt like they were being watched. And it went on for a few moments, and their compass didn't waver. It was aimed in the direction of the smell, and they're both on opposite sides, pointing in the same direction. And then at some point, the smell stops, and they stop feeling anxious, and the north arrow go back to the way they should have been. And then one of the most terrifying of all of the paranormal occurrences that happened at Skinwalker Ranch happened at the very end of 1997. Two NIDS researchers were up on a ridgeline overlooking the homestead. Every night it became commonplace to basically position NIDS researchers all over the property to basically be on the lookout for weird things that are happening. And these two researchers are up on this ridge, kind of obscured and hidden, and they see this orange orb take shape right near the homestead. And one of them had an infrared goggles, and so he looks down at the orb, and he can clearly make out that it's this oval-shaped opening that sounded an awful lot like what Terry had seen on his porch when he saw that humanoid creature crawling out of the portal into his property. Well, these two researchers are looking at this portal, and they see the same thing. They see this black human-like creature crawling out of this orange portal onto the ground, and then it starts running up the hill towards them. And they're like frozen with fear. They start smelling that horrible rotting metallic smell as this big human-like creature bounds up the mountain, and they can hear the shale under its feet as it runs up, and it goes right past them. About 30 feet away from them, they're looking at it, and it just barrels past them at a full sprint up into the mountainside. The following year, in 1998, the activity on the ranch declined significantly. All they have was the occasional strange lights here and there, but for the most part it was done. And in fact, even though NIDS remained on the property, by 2004, the research just wasn't amounting to anything, so they pulled the plug on the operation. They did have footage of a number of the lights that were seen, but again, no one's gonna take a picture of some random lights and say, oh, there you go, proof. You know, they demonstrated that there were, you know, magnetic fields, and they have images of these calves that would reappear after looking like they'd had surgery done to them. They had hundreds of eyewitness reports. You know, they have all this information, but none of it was really definitive proof, which was very frustrating to Robert Bigelow, to Terry and his family. And the way they described it is they felt like they were dealing with an entity or a group of entities that were just consistently one step ahead of them, that they could catch glimpses of what they were doing, but it was never enough to really understand what was happening. They never felt like they were in control. It was always clear that this entity or these entities were in control of the situation, and they never were in a good position to really record hard data or get good footage. Not to mention, this is 1998, this is the late 90s. No one just had, like, you know, an iPhone they can pull out and snap pictures. You had like real cameras. And so the best they could do was some pictures of light and some of the animals that had been mutilated. There's been numerous books put together by some of the people that were a part of this NIDS research team, and to this day they believe that what they saw was a result of some paranormal activity. And to this day, many people believe that this is one of the most credible instances of paranormal activity occurring. So I'd love to hear what you think in the comments, whether you think this is a total fact.
So, I think we definitely know. Ooh, what happened? We'll show this off in a second. We'll come back here. We definitely know that something happens at Skinwalker Ranch. What it is truly, what is it truly paranormal, which I'm more skeptical about, or is it something I think is even scarier, something radiation, chemical based, something that's remnants of maybe a research facility of the government that they wanted to cover up that was super dangerous, that's leaking from the ground. There's so many different things that can happen. I do know that, like, when they test water, when they do this different things from watching the show, that is there's a lot of creepy stuff about it. Honestly, I'd like to dive deeper into the Skinwalker Ranch some other day, because it's really bizarre. It both covers aliens and skinwalkers, and so it's like, gotta pick a lane, because I definitely don't think an alien's going to be morphing into a wolf. And at the same time, I don't think a skinwalker is going to know the concept of a UFO and, like, be flying through the sky. That seems weird. I mean, can it morph into a bird with a light on it? Doubt it. But who knows? I mean, we're talking about magic and stuff like that. Yeah, anything goes, I guess. Raichi, they were like, these guys are too serious. It's not fun to prank them anymore. Yeah, there could be that too, but, like, if you're pranking by killing calves and surgically cutting them up, it's gone beyond a prank to you're just a monster. So, yeah, that story is fascinating, and I want to get to it another time and really talk about it. At the end of the day, though, Skinwalkers, whether or not they be real or not, is a fascinating concept slash creature slash whatever it is. And if it really does exist, there's so much more worse things that could live out there potentially in the galaxies. I find the lore and how it's been described over the centuries to be fascinating. And so I will have to say, like, out of almost everything, I love zombies. Obviously, zombies are not real, but ghosts, skinwalkers, and all that, while I think those really are real, I know people want to, I'm a skeptic. I love talking about them, and I still will treat incidences that, hey, Skinwalker Ranch, something happened there. There's areas of, like with my friend's story, something happened there. What happened? What is the truth? What is it in our heads? What is it? And I'm just really curious, and I want to know more. And honestly, if it truly is Skinwalkers, then we really need to stay the F away from those places, because that is dangerous. Now, what is not dangerous is a new line of merchandise that I have built. No, it's so I've been working on this for on and off for technically the Shop Undead thing's been like multi-year project, but the new merch is not. And so I have a Skinwalker merch. I have ghosts, skeletons, zombies. You can, and I'm going to improve this, my zombies hat. It's not quite the right green. I'm wondering if I can make it the right green and make it pop more. So just be wary of that. There is also, the pricing is a little high. I did that because just everything's gone up. Like, things are expensive, but I do have a discount of, that I will, I think it's Outbreak, that you can go and get this for 20% off. You can try to attempt to buy it right now. Like I mentioned earlier in this episode, I need to double check on the pricing. Like, meaning you're going to get, like, if you try to buy it and it goes through, that you'll get your merchandise. If it doesn't go through, then that means I need to work on something. As there's one, I think, missing piece to it. Now, with the Skinwalker thing, I have the Walk With Me t-shirt. There's two different colors. Well, okay, never mind. Scratch that. You got Black Heather, which has the like dots in it, pure black. And it doesn't show, this is another thing with the store, it doesn't show them individually. You have to go in here and look at them. Black, you got and I love the ox blood black, and then you got white here. This is probably one of my favorite merch items. And I really, if there's anything you guys know about me, is that I will wear my merch before anyone else does. I love merch. And so I still need to get mine ordered in, as a little bit of a cash flow problem to order exactly right now, but I will be very soon. And I am going to be getting everything you see here with the Skinwalker one. You got the water bottle. I love it. And a little secret here is some of this is AI generated. Some of it is also me. Like, I had to go in modify tons of portions of this. So it's not like it's like I spent probably on this design 50 hours potentially. 30 to 50 hours on this design after the AI thing. And so I guess to be a little bit transparent on that, I love it. And one of the reasons I went this route too was because it felt creepier, almost having an AI generate some of these, and kind of what it assumes horror-based creatures and all that would look like. The zombies one, you got the entering the realm of the undead. Fight. This is one I wear all the time, and I actually love this shirt. Fight past your hunger. I just love it. I don't know what it is about this shirt. I love it. I'm gonna be ordering more of these shirts for me because I really do like that shirt. Got anime zombie T-shirt. Then you got one of my so the Skinwalker and the Ghost Campfire are my two favorite designs. I love how ethereal this feels coming out, and it has that green touch to it. I love this one. From the Ashes of Death T-shirt, and this is like I sell myself with this stuff, so don't worry. Like if you feel like this is like too salesy, I also wanted a notebook. Anything that I specifically want, I usually add to these stores. So there's also hand lotion. No, I'm just kidding. It's body wash. People are like, what is that for? Well, people really do like ghosts a lot. They need that hand lotion. I'm just kidding. The mug is also something that I love. I love this mug. This is probably one of my favorite things, along with those other Skinwalker ones that I've made. I love it so much. This is another design that is AI generated, but I spent so much time on it. I probably spent more time on this than the Skinwalker one, touching up things. I had to go into a program and touch it up. So, and then you got the Skeleton Eternal Soul one. Yeah, more to come to. And I also take requests. If there's something that you want that I potentially could have, let me know, and I'll put it in as I do more and more. Like I said, it is a little pricey. I will have sales going on all the time, so just make sure that you know that. How much does it just cost from the get-go is just kind of pricey. What's the hat brink? This one right here. So you see this, I need to change the color. Before I couldn't change the color, now I can. So I'm going to make, yes. I spent a lot of time designing this to look just like mine. It's not quite perfectly mine. I'm going to see if I can work on it some more, but it is very close. It does not have I need to talk. I think Low in the community can maybe has someone that can do the under part, because there's this part right here. This is a practice starter piece. So yeah, I would love to get something that looks just like mine, as I think people really like mine, and I think people would love to get it, including myself. I want to get another one. This one's starting to like lose its form and all that, and I'd love to get a new hat. I have more hats I'm designing. I just want to, like, hats are a weird one, and getting it done right. And so I don't know if I found a design that I quite like, but yeah, I don't need, like, this is a kind of a promo thing of stuff I'm working on. Don't be afraid. Like, I think you should get it. I think they look sick. I think they look awesome, and I am definitely going to be picking this lineup with me for me very soon. I need to get some kid stuff in here too, for my little ones. Like this one, Entering the Realm of the Dead, would be an adorable little kid's shirt. Of course, you can go down to small, but yeah, different colors just to add some like brightness to because I almost always do black shirts, and my wardrobe is black shirts, so some of these shirts I'm going to be getting brighter too. Wolf, you and Susie can have the hats, her being pink or purple. That would be kind of fun. Honestly, I want to make a purple hat for Games Revealed anyways, so there you go. I hope you guys like it. I hope that honestly, I'd love to see people I mean, this helps support the channel. I will also have like a new way of supporting the game I'm going to be making, that I am making. I just need to be able to, I want to line that up to like, hey, everything that you donate or whatever will go to a fund for the game, and get your name put on it. That's down the road. Yeah, Wolf. Well, the nice thing about this, like the Skinwalker one, is that, yeah, it's not very colorful, even with the red one. The design, it pops so hard. I love it. I have thought about getting a white one, but white stains. That's my problem, is that I have kids. They'll hug me and I become sticky. So I can't do white that much. But I think, does this one come with a straw? Yep, this one comes with a straw. This is a reusable tumbler with a metal straw, is a perfect combo for hot or cold drinks at any time of the day. This is one I'll probably be picking up very soon. Even though I don't know how, I need to get another picture in there. because I really want to know what the top looks like. I don't think it's closes off automatically, so it's really hard for me to take that with me places, but I love the design of this one. Okay, I'm going to stop fanboying over my own stuff. Narcissism, I guess, unbound. But yeah, you can go to shopundead.com, shop for yourself. If it does not work right now, let me know, and I will get it figured out for later. You can use code OUTBREAK to get 20% off. I'll have more promos coming in Games Revealed on the Brink. So honestly, I'd love to see people really enjoy and appreciate these shirts as much as I do, as I'm going to be owning all these very soon once I order a sample. And I'm going to be doing giveaways too. I want to make sure that it's what people want, though, because I've tried doing giveaways for shirts and stuff like that, and people have not cared. But I think this lineup right here, let's say outdoors camping lineup is kind of what I've named it, and I probably should put a category in for this type of design, because I'll be making more designs as we go along, as this is something that I actually really have fun with. I'm not the most artistic person, but I loved and appreciate doing stuff I can wear. I don't know what it is. It's fun. Okay, I will stop talking about this. I'm curious what you guys know in the comments, in the chat, or whatever on all this. You can always tell me later. Thank you, Wolf. And also, thank you, DLS. And yeah, I was just curious, like, is this something that you'd be interested, even in a giveaway? Yeah. With that being said, I also will be, I have stories that align with some of these products too. So stories will be kind of fun too, but we'll get to that in a little bit, or in a later time. So that promo that was really long, this outro is getting really long. Skinwalkers are fun and some of the scariest things out there, especially if they're real. The t-shirt is a fun one that is hopefully more levity, and you don't piss off a Skinwalker by wearing it. I'll have LoJack wear this t-shirt when we go and do our camp out near Skinwalker Ranch. Do know that as this gets more popular and as we get more subs and more people watching, I'm going to do more and more challenges, including going to do ghost hunt, because this is not going to be a paranormal channel, but the quintessential, this channel is for projects and stuff that I like, and I tend to like the more ethereal, the more paranormal, the more horror-based, and all the fun ghost stories. Everything else is just I love Halloween. Is my favorite time of the year. So with that, thank you guys for joining me on this journey, and we will do another episode. I'll see you guys next week. I haven't fully planned out what the next topics will be, but if you have a topic that you want me to cover, let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out. Later. Don't let the Skinwalkers get you.